And that way it'll give us. Perfect. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Okay, so once again, we're going to get started with Event Planning 101. I am Kelly Carpenter, the Assistant Director of Leadership, and I am joined today by Janiyah Richardson, our SGA Administrative Assistant. This particular breakout session is a high-level look at event planning and best practices. So this is not the nuts and bolts of planning event policies for Towson University. We want to highly encourage you, if you are the person who is responsible for planning events for your organization, we recommend that you attend the reservation and planning events breakout that is happening in Blockout 2. It's being presented by ECS. They will go into some very specific details about policies on campus, but this is just a much larger viewpoint of planning events. So we're going to break it down. There we go. Into some hopefully easy steps to follow. The first thing that you want to do when you are planning events, you really want to develop specific event goals. You want to have a purpose for making the decisions that you are doing. And I've broken it down into 4 basic blocks or thoughts of mine. So the first is define the specific purpose of the event. In other words, what is it? What is it going to do? What is it for? Is it a fundraiser? Is it to build awareness of your organization? Is it to build community within your organization? There can be lots of different reasons, and certainly an event can do more than one thing. But before you get into this is what we want to do, you need to know the why. What is it for? Once you know what it's for, you then really need to have a conversation about how does the event connect to the purpose of our group. Oftentimes we'll have student members who will come to their organization and say, hey, this looks really, really fun. I think we should do this. And it may not actually match the purpose of the organization. So in order for it to be purposeful, you want to ask the questions, why us? Why now? And are we representing ourselves in the organization well? So if we agree to do this event, does it make sense? In other words, that we're the ones doing it. And also the why now is important. Is this the right time of year to be doing this particular event for our organization? Once you have the what is it and the why us and all of the why makes sense, this is what we're doing and this is why we want to connect ourselves to it, you then want to think about what it's giving. So first, what do you want the attendees, those people who are coming to the event, to receive by attending? You need to be able to answer the question, what's in it for them? Are they learning something? Are they having a good time and learning about your organization and the potential to join? Is it a fundraiser and they're just receiving a really good meal or a really good show? But what's in it for them? Why? How are you going to convince them to actually show up? And then finally, you want to think more internally about the rest of the organization members who are going to help run the event. How will they benefit by helping to run this program? You should be able to answer the what's in it for us. So what will we gain by having this? And the we can be the collective organization, but also truly think about the individual. What would the individual member gain by helping to run this event? Every decision that follows about the details of your program should come back to these 4 questions, these goals that you have set for the program. When you get to how much money should we spend on this? What type of entertainment should we have? What does the music look like? Come back to these details. This is your why. This is your purpose behind the program. So come back and make sure that it stays in alignment. You should review them at every time that you get together to have a meeting to plan your event. The next thing is to talk about your planning timeline. This is honestly where a lot of student organizations get caught up. They don't realize how much time it takes to plan a successful event. So there's a lot of details on this slide. Obviously, these are going to be sent out afterwards, but the biggest thing that you need to remember is that the larger the event is, the longer time you need to plan it. So it takes more. You also really need to stay organized. Stay organized in a way that works for you and your committee. A basic list is great. A shared document would be fine. There's a lot of task apps that can help you. If there's something that your org already uses that everyone is familiar with, that works too. But you need to have some sort of a tool to stay organized. You also need to consider all of your TU policy requirements, and that's where that ECS breakout session in the next group will be really, really helpful because you need to ensure that you're following all of the campus policies. And then you need to remember your workload and capacity as a student. You are all students first. So don't take on more than you actually have time for. Be realistic about how much time do I actually have to commit to planning an event. It doesn't mean that you can't plan events, but maybe you need to include more people to ensure that everyone has capacity for the work that it takes. And then review your available resources for detailed help. We have all types of resources on campus, online, on the website, on Involved at TU. But even if you just need a person-to-person, that's where the support team in the student activities office and the student government office come into play. We can all help you kind of work through the details that you're trying to figure out to have a successful event. The second half of this slide really walks you through backwards design. Backwards design is a way for you to figure out how much time does it take to plan the event before you select a date. So before you look at a calendar and say, we want to have an event on March 16th, you first look at your event goals. Then you consider all of the work that leads up to the event. So all the decisions and the deadlines and the tasks that it would require to get it done. And you figure out how long those are going to take. You then essentially add it all up and you set your date based on that amount of time. So you figure out all the work first, come up with a plan, and then set your date. This absolutely helps you to ensure that you've also given yourself a buffer of a couple of extra days. You can set all of your event meetings accordingly. You can have a true plan in place before you jump in, and you make sure that you give yourself plenty of time for all of the things that you need to think through. Our number 3 is managing a committee. Successful events truly are not run by a single person. They are not planned or organized by a single person. They are planned and organized by a committee. So whatever your organization structure looks like, think about how you can form a committee. I'm sorry, I forgot to mute my phone behind me. Think about how you can form a committee within your organization. And then when you do, here are some really helpful tips for managing that committee. Using that strong timeline that you came up with, the backwards design, consider assigning specific roles, ensure that tasks have deadlines. When you are delegating tasks, if you have the ability to allow for choice, that really helps to keep people motivated. If you get to choose what it is that you're working on and it's something you enjoy doing or something that you want to challenge yourself with, you're going to put more effort into it as opposed to being assigned something that you don't really want to do. You want to make sure that the group agrees upon a communication method so they know how to reach out to each other and where the communication regarding this particular event is being stored. And then when it comes to decision making, major decisions should be made by the entire committee so that everyone's voice is heard, but allow for minor decisions to be made by the individuals. That allows for that autonomy in the positions and the delegated tasks that you've given them. You want to normalize asking for help very early in the process. Meeting number 1. You want to make it clear that if at any point in time someone is struggling, has questions, needs a refresher on the decision that was made, that it is okay to ask for help. Too many times what you see is drama within an organization because people take on the work of planning events, then become overwhelmed and don't ask for help until it's too late and they've let people down. And then that's where your drama starts. So normalize it early that people can ask for help. And then make sure that you're making it fun along the way. Do what you can to ensure meetings are enjoyable and the communication is enjoyable. The next step is budgeting. Inevitably, you must have money in order to put on an event of any kind whatsoever. So this is a flow chart for how to budget for an event. Let me be clear, this is not the same as your SGA budget. This is not the same as asking for funding for a student organization. This is specifically related to designing a budget and utilizing a budget for an event. So first, you want to review and confirm and total all of your available funds. Those funds could come from your organization money, your general account. They could come from sponsorships. They could come from donations. They could come from collaborations where you are working with more than one group and everyone is pitching in financially. But you want to get it all together and figure out what is the grand total? What is the amount of money that we have to work towards? From that, you want to subtract a buffer. I recommend 5%. That's to cover unexpected or emergency expenses, the thing everybody forgot to think about that at the last minute you're like, oh yeah, we have to pay for that too. Then you want to gather quotes for every expense. A quote is simply that. It's just, this is how much it would cost if you choose to make this purchase. It is not making a purchase. It is not confirming or forcing you to utilize a service if you're reaching out to others, but it allows you to find out how much would it cost. You want to think about hidden costs with your quotes, any fees, shipping, etc. Put all of those quotes in one place. I suggest a spreadsheet because it's easy to read, but whatever document you use, just make sure that everyone has access to it, but you don't actually make those purchases or expenditures yet. You then take it to the committee where you prioritize, you reduce if necessary, you eliminate if you have to, and you approve what will be spent towards the event. Asking your committee members to suggest any expenses you may not have considered is incredibly helpful. More people looking at the list of what we will spend our money on is better because someone will inevitably think of something that you forgot. Once it is agreed upon, this is what we will do with our money, that's when you work towards making all of the purchases, placing the orders, and completing the contracts. This is where the SGA process comes in. And Janaya will talk specifically about contracts at the end of at the second half of our presentation. But make sure that you are following those SGA financial policies and procedures to make your purchases. You also want to confirm all of your order details. You want to make sure things are actually going to make it to campus before your event. Keep in mind, it sometimes takes a day, 2 days, maybe even 3 days on the worst of it for packages to be processed by the university. So if they're arriving to the post office, we get overrun with Amazon packages, and sometimes the post office takes a day, a full 24 hours before they're able to get them into those lockers and out to you. So make sure you've added that time in. And then finally, after the event, you want to make sure that you record all of the expenses in detail. How much did it actually cost? What was purchased? What quantity? Ensure that all of your bills are paid, deposit any raised funds immediately into your account, and then provide a final report to the organization. Here is how it all ended up being. The tip at the bottom is incredibly important. Many of our organizations want to utilize ticket sales to cover the costs of the actual event. You don't want to be overconfident on your ticket sales because the bills get paid no matter what happens. If you hold an event and no one comes, or something disastrous happens that day, maybe it's a really rainy day, you still have to pay the bills. So make sure that you have the money in your accounts before you actually hold your event. Next, we're going to talk about risk management. So risk management is basically preparation and detailed planning to help you avoid any unfortunate situations at your event. These type of things can be safety things. So there's some things on the slide. There is a link where you can go to a planning events document that's extremely helpful that talks about location restrictions and campus policies. This is also the type of information that will be gone over in the ECS session in the second breakout. You want to consider check-in procedures and attendance tracking. How will you know who is at your event? You want to think about how the rules of the event will be communicated and enforced, whatever that might mean to the event. Maybe you don't think there's a lot of rules, but you have something about the food. Something as simple as we want people to only take 2 pieces of pizza in the beginning so that we can make sure that it lasts. Well, how will you communicate that? Maybe your event has a lot of rules and you need to make sure that everybody knows every little detail. Think about that communication plan so that you also can enforce them easily. Are the activities in the space free of any safety concerns? Now, obviously, when you're holding an event on campus, your ECS event manager helps you out with this, but you do want to be watchful and mindful during your planning that you're not creating a situation where there's tripping hazards, where you have cords stretched across an area. You just want to make sure that the space itself is free of any safety concerns. If you are collecting money, specifically cash, you want to think about what are the money handling plans to ensure that your cash remains safe. So do you have a locking money box? Where are you going to put it? Who will be in charge of it? Who's keeping an eye on it? And who's getting it over to the business office to be deposited as quickly as possible? You want to establish a chain of command and a communication plan for during the event. So truly, Who is the point person? Who's the number one person during the event that the chain of command comes from? And how are you communicating out? If you're relying simply on text, does everybody have each other's number? Do you know who is in your phone? If you're using a GroupMe, have you set up a separate GroupMe just for the committee of the event itself? Think about the communication during an event. And then finally, have an event kit on site with extra supplies, very basic things like a Sharpie marker and some plain pieces of paper and some tape go a long way when you need to make a sign really, really quickly for something that you forgot about. But also think about any extras of specific event supplies. What I mean by that is if you're doing an activity that has something required, make sure you have extras. For example, if you're going to play bingo, make sure you have some extra bingo sheets, some bingo cards, and some markers off to the side of the box in case you run out or something happens. But just putting some things together for yourself. So when the inevitable happens, you don't have to run all over the place looking for supplies or be in a panic. Scissors are also very important. We constantly have people coming into our office asking if there's any scissors they can borrow. So make sure you grab those before your event. At this point in your planning process, when you've gotten through all of these steps, this is a great time to have a worst case scenario game with your committee. Sit down and play what could happen at our event. What did we not think about? What could go wrong? And when those ideas are thought of, talk through it, figure out what is our plan. This catches you, able to think about the things that you weren't prepared for. You can make sure that you have the supplies that you need in that box. You can think about any safety concerns that are in the room. And again, the more people you have helping you with this, the more ideas you're going to get to. Now, obviously, you shouldn't let it go too out of hand. You don't need to worry about if there's a natural disaster and the whole campus gets shut down. Obviously, people are going to jump in to help you there. But within your event, think through everything. Take time to do that. Number 6 is talking about accessibility. So you want to ask yourselves throughout your planning process, can every person who wants to, or who is included if it's an invitation-only event, reasonably participate at every level of the event? So every aspect of the event, have you made it accessible? And if not, what accommodations could you provide? There's some things for you to think about on the screen, but this is not an exhaustive list. So you really need to think about the whole picture, but things like dietary options. If you're having food, have you planned for individuals who have dietary restrictions? If you're doing physical activities, have you thought about alternatives for individuals who may not be able to do the physical activity the way that you have planned it? Have you thought about alternative formats for printed materials or spoken instructions? Remembering that you want to ensure everyone who's attending your event can understand not only the rules of the event, but who they can understand what is needed to reasonably participate. And then again, physical space and layout accommodations. There's so many more things to think through depending on the complexity of your event. The great thing is we have a wonderful accessibility and disability services office here on campus. They absolutely will consult with you about your event. You just need to schedule an appointment with them. This is not a walk-in opportunity. And make sure that you're giving them ample notice for that appointment so that they can be sure that someone's available to meet with you. For the person who just came in, there's not a sign-in form for this meeting, but if you just want to put your name and the organization that you are representing in the chat, that works perfectly. Thank you. Okay, the next piece is the marketing. The worst thing that you can do is no marketing. Have late marketing. That's when you market it the day of the event. Incomplete marketing, where you forget to put very important information like the location or the time, or boring marketing that no one wants to look at. So when you're marketing the event, you want to make sure that you're getting all of the details on there and that it's also obviously something that's going to catch people's attention. One of the biggest pitfalls that we see student orgs falling into is that they only use the method that they would personally pay attention to. I've listed 8 methods of marketing in the middle of the screen: social media, the TU Today, daily email, involved at TU, events at TU, which is another calendar online, flyers, digital signage, next event, which means at the event before, if you are an organization that has regular events, you are ready to announce what comes next. So at the conclusion of that event, you can say, And at our next event, this is what we're doing. Here's the date, time, and location. And then handouts, quarter pages, whatever you want to call them, if you're tabling, etc. These are just some. These are not all of the ways that you can market. Be creative. Use your networks. Use the people within your organization to help you market the event. The marketing also doesn't have to stick with just the committee. Once the marketing is created, the pieces are created, you then can disperse it to every member of your group to say, hey, help us get the word out. We want to have a huge turnout. Tell everyone that you know. And let them be creative in how they get it out there too. Just remember to follow campus policies. Chris mentioned the posting policies during the top 10 in the beginning. You want to make sure that you are following those posting policies on campus and any other policies on campus about marketing and sharing of information. And if you are using the TU brand, which you can do as a student organization, make sure that you follow the branding guidelines. The website is listed in the yellow box. It's just towson.edu/brand. And that'll give you not only tools to create with, where you can utilize the logo, you can download the logo, but it also gives you all the branding guidelines so you know that you're using it properly. Okay, and then at the event, we often think that once the event is here, we are done. We are not done at this point. It's just equally as important to stay organized, to communicate, to ensure that your committee is still functioning all the way through an event. Most importantly, because we know event planning can be stressful and it can create a lot of conflict if you don't do it well. If up to this point, you've been doing all of these things and you've been doing it well and you've been communicating and you've been creating a fun environment, then everyone who's working on the event will be having a good time. I want you truly to think about when you've gone to an event and you can see that everyone working the event, everyone from the organization is miserable. You can see it on their faces. They don't want to be there. They're not talking to each other, or even worse, they're talking about each other. Do you even want to stay other than to hear the tea? You definitely don't want to be there. So you want to make sure that part of your planning is also about ensuring that the people planning the event are having a good time and want to be there. That energy is contagious. If you're having a great time, so will everybody else who's coming to your event. So you want to make sure you're having fun, you're being positive, you're respecting the facility, and so are the people who are coming to your event, that you leave things better than when you arrived. What that means is that you don't trash the place and just leave it, that you leave things in better shape than when you actually walked through the door, that you praise any work done well by your committee members publicly. You let people know that they're doing a great job, but you provide any correction privately. There will always be a committee member who's doing something that they really shouldn't be doing, or in a way that you don't want it done, and you need to provide some correction. You can do that without being a rude person. You can do that kindly. But even if you do it kindly, you want to do it privately. You want to pull them off to the side to the best of your ability. Send them a text and then say, hey, I texted you, so that they look at their phone. But offer that privately so that they're not embarrassed. And then make sure that you're gathering feedback from your attendees. Even if it's just walking around asking people if they're having a great time, you can do it formally by having an assessment. As you know, most of the things that you come to that Student Activities does, we have an assessment where we send you a request through Involved It to You, asking you to rate the event. You can certainly use that format, or you could just walk around and ask people. You could gather some notes, some observations throughout the event. And then finally, after the event, we'd all love to just go to bed and cover up and say, it's done, it's over, woo! It's not done, it's not over. There's still some things that you have to do. Pay your bills at the very top. Again, that's where Janiyah comes in to help you. But inevitably, all of your bills really should be paid before your event even starts. But some things you'll get invoiced afterwards, like ECS charges, or if you are using on-campus catering, Tiger Hospitality, as Chris mentioned, those will come after the fact. So you want to ensure that all of your bills are paid. You want to send thank yous. Thank yous go a long way, and they don't have to be anything fancy. They can simply be a text to the people from your committee, but it could be a handwritten note. It could be any version of a thank you, but make sure that you're letting people know that you appreciate their effort toward the event that you held together. That also goes for anyone outside of your organization that pitched in and helped you out. Even if you paid them, it's nice to send them a thank you. And then you want to review and assess how the event how the event went. You want to make sure that if things went well, that you're writing that down. And if things didn't go well, that you're taking notes on how to improve next time. You want to go back to those original 4 questions. What was it? Why us? Why now? What do we get out of it? What do they get out of it? Did you accomplish those things? By the time the event got here, did all of those things still happen? And then making notes for the next time is super important. Make sure that those are stored in a place where your organization has access to them. Even if you are not holding the exact same event, if you are holding another event, you will learn from each one. What went well, what didn't go well, what we should have done, what could have made our time a little bit more fun or a little bit easier. And so write these things down. And then finally, report back to the organization. Specifically for those of you who are part of very large organizations, make sure that you close the loop and have your committee do a report at your next organization meeting. Make sure that you've given time in your agenda so that there's an opportunity to hear from the committee and also for the members who are not on the committee to offer their feedback as well, so that they can be, those notes can be written down if there was anything really important that came up. All right, I went through all of that super quickly because I wanted to make sure that we have plenty of time for Janaya's piece on contracts. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Janaya, specifically to talk about the entertainment contracts here at TU.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm the SGA admin assistant, and I am the person who processes the contracts for payment. First, when you are filling out a contract, you put that into your purchase request form. That will go to our graduate assistant, Habib, and then he'll forward that information over to me. And I will go through like what you need to put in that information for me to process it. But that's typically how the process goes. And I'm just the person who does that. I'm the middleman to help get, your services or the people who provided you services paid. So first of all, why do you need a contract and when do you need a contract is whenever an outside person or business is providing a service for your event or for your meeting. Sometimes it's not going to be something as large as an event. Sometimes it could just be a guest speaker for a meeting. So we want to make sure you guys are including a contract and you're including that in your budget so we can, and from your purchase request, so we can make sure that we get those people paid. So that's the first one. And then where do you find the form for the contract? So if you go to Involved at TU on the right-hand side, there is a campus links side of the form, and that is where you will find something that says entertainment contract. And then there also is on that same right-hand side a guide to help you fill it out on Involved at TU. And also with those contracts to help people get paid is we need a W-9 for individuals and businesses, but mostly for businesses, sometimes with equipment like Snap Happy, Photo Booth, that's a common one that we use, or anything with inflatables, we will need proof of insurance as well. And then where do you submit the form? Of course, you submit it with the purchase request, and that goes along to Habib. And it goes to our SGA finance email. He'll go through it and he'll send it to me, and I will try to process them as fast as I can, but hopefully you sent it 7 days before, so I have time to process it and it's not last minute. Exceptions, like typically we pay guest speakers, DJs, fashion designers, makeup artists, but exceptions to the contracts are photographers and videographers. That is a different process where if you're filling out the purchase request, it'll be more specific there. But also if you have questions, you can stop by the SGA suite and visit me, or you can email me at jmrichardson@towson.edu or SGA Finance, and we can answer more questions there. And then also, as Chris mentioned before, if they do not sign the contract, please do not work with them. We don't want to get into troubles or force you guys into any trouble with your org. So please do not work with them if they do not sign it. And on the next slide, I will go into more specifics of what the contract looks like and what I need you guys to fill out. So I know it may be a bit hard to see, but I would like you guys to pay attention to sections 1, 4, 7, and 8. So section 1 is specifically what I need you guys to fill out, and maybe the artist or business you are working with will fill out the other sections. So 1 is just simple, the name of your event and the address that is being held. Some students think this is optional, and it's not, because I do not know this information, and it's vital for us providing payment for your event or your meeting, for your service being provided. So in section 4, just what type is it? Is it a concert? Is it are we paying a guest speaker? Are we paying like a DJ for dance? There's also other sections that we use for like fashion designer or makeup artists. So that's typically like what type of engagement's being selected. Section 5 is the dates and time of the engagement. Now, this can be typically different for everyone that you hire. Like if you hire a DJ, they might be there earlier or later. And if you hire like a host, that might be later. But typically, I want to say what I've gotten in the past is for section 1, they're all filled out separately, even though they're for the same event. So if you could have the name of the event and the location be uniform when you're filling out contracts for the same event, even though they're different people, that would actually help me a ton as well when I'm processing and filing your contracts. And then section 7 is how to contact you. This is, we need your organization name and the person who's helping facilitate the contract with the business or the person who is providing you guys services. And of course, 8, if there's any special provisions. And then the other sections I would like to get into is the date you enter the contract. And of course, the artist will mostly be the person who's performing the service. Whatever it is, we will need their social security number. And I want you guys to strongly pay attention to section 6, because it will ask for the amount and who to make it payable to. So we have run into issues in back and forths with people either putting their individual name, but they want to be paid under their business name, or vice versa. So it is important, whatever W-9 is submitted, it has to match section 6 of who they would like it to be payable to. And at the bottom is where we need the signature. I would recommend you guys have all those sections filled out, look it over with the person either online or by you, and have them fill that out last with their name, their wet signature by the by. It can be digital, but it just has to be like a handwritten signature. And of course, the title and the date. And the title and the date should also match the day on top where the contract is entered. And that is hopefully not too much information, but that is a brief breakdown of how to fill out the contract to make your life simple and my life simple, so we can process these as fast as we can and get those people paid. So, yeah. And if you have any questions, you can also reach out or just stop by the SGA suite, and I can also help you do this like step by step in person as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Janaya. I'm going to point out a few more things. We'll really just lift up some of what Janaya said. I hope that you all caught how many days out she said you needed to do these contracts. The minimum is 7. That's the minimum. If you are planning a large scale event, there is no reason to wait until 7 days before your event to start gathering your contracts. As soon as you make a decision on this person is our DJ and they're going to do our event, you can go ahead and start working on getting the contract signed so that there's plenty of time. Should a person come back and say, I'm not going to sign this, I don't agree to these terms, that gives you time to find someone else. Because truly, when we say it, if they won't sign this contract, you cannot do business with them. There is no way for us to pay them. It's simply a no. So you want to make sure, again, so that it's not stressing you out. We never want your events to be something that causes you undue amount of stress. Give yourself plenty of time. You don't have to wait all the way up until the week before to do this stuff. And with Janaya's help, you can even ask a lot of questions along the way to make it less stressful. That's easier done when you've given yourself more time. The other thing that I want to lift up is the signature portion. So that's at the very bottom. Again, I know it's kind of hard to see to get the whole form on the screen. It made it really small, but all the way at the bottom where it says artist, artist is the person that you're paying. right? So it is the host, it is the DJ, it is the company that's providing the photo booth. Doesn't matter what they are, they're an artist. We're calling them an artist. So that's the part that they are going to sign. Where it says Towson University, that part has to be signed by someone here at Towson, not you. You cannot sign a contract. You are a contact person for the event. You are the person who is organizing it, which is number 7. You become the host. So that's where your information goes, so that Janaya, if there's questions, knows who to reach out to say, hey, there's a problem on this contract. Do not sign for Towson University. Leave that blank. After it's submitted with your artist signature, that's the part that Janaya takes care of. And the whole team takes care of getting that signed for you so that the payment can be processed. Those were the 2 pieces that I really just wanted to lift them up, because I think, along with some other common things that we know student orgs struggle with, that's definitely one of them, is just getting things in on time and then making sure that all the right pieces of information are in the right spots. We have done really, really well on time. It is 2:42 and we technically have until 2:55. So we have just over 10 minutes that we can entertain questions. You can either ask me or Janaya a question about general event things, general best practices. You can also ask about finance questions, and if they're a short answer, Janaya can field those questions. And if it's not a short answer, she may have you reach out to her through a different method. But we do have some time for questions. If you have one, feel free to put it in the chat. You can also, at this time, add any best practices that you have experienced if you're a person who has planned events for your organization. It's always helpful to hear from each other. So if you've got something to share with the group, now's the time. That's a great question, Kimberly. So what is some advice for an event that is to be hosted by 2 organizations? So truly collaboration means that you start planning together from the beginning. So starting all the way out at those event goals, get your people together and create those together, making sure that the event is beneficial for both organizations. Talk through what are the commonalities that we're both hoping to get out of this. Even if there's something unique that one needs and the other doesn't, how can we ensure that we're also working towards the event as a whole together? When you're delegating out tasks, doing your best to make sure that it's even. Sometimes that's not always possible because maybe one organization has a special skill and that's taking the bulk of a task, and another organization takes a different task. But just making sure that, to the best of your ability, it's kind of an even split of what you're doing. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen organizations essentially have drama over is the credit. So whose event is it? Who's getting credit for all the hard work that's being done to make the event a success? So that comes back to that praising publicly comment. Make sure that everyone who was involved in the planning gets a shout out. Make sure that both organizations have equal billing on the marketing, that everybody knows that it's hosted by both. And then just do your best to split everything up and work truly together. I have seen organizations who have tried to like split something up, work in separate camps, and then come together at the last minute and make it all work together. That's so much more stressful than just working together from the start. I hope that's helpful. You're welcome. Okay, if you were hosting an event and wanted another org to collab for a segment in it, does that require any official documentation or can they just partake? That's a great question, Ahmad. So while it does not require any official documentation, I think clear communication is the most important piece there. So if you're doing an event and you realize, I'm going to use a real example, you need a host. And we have an organization, TLT, the Lunch Club, or the Lunch Table, excuse me, sorry, TLT, that does a great job at hosting. And so you want to ask them, hey, would you all be willing to collaborate with us and you guys be the hosts of our event? Making sure that through some form of communication, I'm a fan of formal written out documents, but that's just a personal, preference, but writing down what that means. So what does it mean that that organization is giving and what are they receiving in return? So when you're asking an organization to collab on just a segment of an event, maybe the marketing doesn't say that it's hosted by them, but rather that they're providing support. There's some way of designating, this is the org that's bringing the event to you, but hey, these orgs are helping out. There's a lot of different ways and different verbiage you can use to explain people's roles in an event, but making sure that they know what to expect is the most important with that clear communication up front. I'm also, like I said, I'm a fan of creating a document, so I don't ever think there's anything wrong with that because it lays out very clearly for everyone. This is what's expected of us. This is what we're getting. This is what we're required to do. Things like what time are we supposed to show up and how many people are supposed to come and what are we supposed to wear? Putting all of that into a single document that can then be shared with their members is very helpful. It's not required in every instance, and it's certainly not required by the university by any means, but it is helpful as an organization, especially if you're doing something complex. And Janaya, feel free to jump back in here if you have any thoughts as well to add. Absolutely. We definitely have time for at least one or two more questions if there are any. I will say though, if you have sat through our presentation, thank you so, so much. If you are ready to leave the presentation, you certainly can. You're going to want to go back to Involved at TU to see all of the links for your options during your break time. As Chris mentioned, there is a networking opportunity, there is a guided meditation opportunity, or there is simply a break opportunity. We have one more question. Do unpaid guest speakers need contracts or documentation? This is such an excellent question. Here is my recommendation. Yes. And here's why. That documentation, specifically the contract, also outlines for you. If you look at, you can see still on your screen, the middle part, number 5. It gives the date and the time of the engagement. The breaks are intermission. So if you're doing a really long event and that person's going to speak maybe a couple of times, you can put in breaks there. The setup time and the sound check. And then the deadline that they get their stuff out of here. If they are bringing any equipment with them, that's telling them what time they have to get out of the building. As many of you know, if you have a late program and you're not cleared out by the time that your reservation ends, you can get charged by ECS because they have to keep the building open for you. So this information, this document, although you're not paying them, is a super helpful way to ensure that all of those details are still communicated and it gives you what to put down. What you can do if there is no payment being given under number 6 compensation, you can put 0. Just put $0 and then they can still sign it and you can still submit it to SGA Finance for them to keep it for you so that they know this person is not getting paid and you can keep it in your own records. But this just gives you an excellent tool to use for those guest speakers that do not require any type of payment. The PowerPoint will be made available to you. We're actually recording every session today. Chris will put together a playlist of all of the recordings and we'll send it out to all the student orgs. It usually takes about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before we get it out to you, but it will be available, yes. All right, you remember spreadsheets we mentioned in the slides, but are there any other tools or software you would recommend for managing and planning events? Honestly, there are so many that you could use. It really is about using a tool that you are comfortable and familiar with and that your organization members, your committee members have access to. So a simple Word document can be used, just a place where you're putting everything. But if you already use a task app like Monday, or I'm trying to think of some of the others, of course, all the names just went right out of my head. But if you're using a task app where you can delegate different things to people, that's also a helpful way. Any type of a spreadsheet is also another nice way to just organize information. I do like to plan events using Excel spreadsheets because you can create a tab for each portion of the event or each component, but it's all together in one document. And it's a little bit easier to flip through information if you have a lot of logistics to plan. But it really is about finding something that works for you. So it's not a direct answer, but yes. All right, at this time, Janiyah and I, you're welcome. Janiyah and I are going to stay on the Zoom so that if you do have any other questions, you're welcome to stay with us and we'll continue to answer them for just a few more minutes. But everyone else should go ahead and move on to your break time. Again, make a choice between your three options: the networking, where you have a chance to talk to other members of other organizations, the guided meditation, or take that necessary break, go get a snack, go get a drink, and then we'll see you back for the second round of breakouts. Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop recording. If I can.
Wait, do you want me to stop or?
Yes, please. I don't know where it went. It's hidden.
Oh, I'll stop.